Hello booktube, hello book friends. Welcome back to my channel and another weekly reading wrap up. This one for the week ending Saturday, September the 13th, 2025. I need to take a breath. It's been one of those weeks. I've actually read quite a bit, but it's been quite a chaotic week. I've spent quite a bit of time kind of hanging around, which has given me opportunity to read. And yeah, let's not go into the reasons why it's been a chaotic week. Let's just talk about the books, shall we? That's what you're here for, after all. So I finished. Let's talk about the books I finished. Yeah, let's do that. So I finished the audiobook of Elly Griffiths' The Last Word. I think I was reading or listening to this last week. This is the fourth book in the Harbinder Core series. So I think it's the most recent one. I don't think there is a fifth book yet, if there is going to be a fifth book. It was okay. It's not. I don't think it's the best of the four. And to be honest, I'm not sure which I would put as the best of the four, because I like and dislike bits of all four of them. But I think there were less bits to like in this one, put it that way. It revitalizes characters from the second book in the series. So it brings them back in a slightly different guise. So in the second book, they were kind of all individuals doing their own thing. They had a kind of common connection in a person who was murdered, which brought them together. And then in this fourth book, two of them have started their own private detective agency, and one of those is now the partner of the third one. So they're much closer together. This is the Harbinder Core series. She is kind of relegated to a secondary character, really, in this story. So it centers around a writer who seemingly died a natural death, but her two daughters don't think that it was, and they think that her partner murdered her. And they asked the private eyes to investigate, and that's how it starts. And then it gets quite complicated, because they start making linkages to other writers and journalists who potentially have had semi-suspicious deaths, although they've also all been written up as accidents or suicides or whatever. Anyway, it's okay. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. I just didn't enjoy it as much as the other three in the series, and I think there was more to dislike about it than those. But it was a good read, and it was an audio book, so I was kind of dipping into it when I was hanging around for other things. I'll talk about the next audiobook I started after that in a minute. I also finished this, which is one of Thomas Merton's volumes of diaries. This is the sixth volume, yeah, volume 6. So there are 7 volumes in total, and I've been interested in Thomas Merton for a very long time, more kind of seriously so in the last sort of 10 years or so, I guess. I have a number of the books that he's written, and I have his diaries. Thomas Merton was a Trappist monk, a writer, obviously. He was a peace activist, and he wrote a lot of both books around kind of his theological faith, and related topics. And he he died in an accident in 1968. So it was relatively he was relatively young. He was in his, I guess, his 50s. So he'd seen quite a lot in his lifetime. This volume kind of includes is 1966 to 1967. So there's bits in it around the sort of starts of the Vietnam War and so on and so forth. And I this book. So take a step back. I bought all of the volumes of his diaries back in 2016, and there's been a volume by the side of my bed for, well, since 2016, and it's the sort of book that I will pick up if I finish a book, and I want to read something. Don't want to go to sleep. I'm not tired enough. I want to carry on reading, but I finish the book I'm reading. I very often would pick up his diaries and read those. And sometimes I'll stick with them and read several chapters, pages. And other times I'll just read a couple of entries and leave it at that. Between 2016 and 2020, I read the first 5 volumes of his diaries. And then this volume I started in 2020, and it took me almost 5 years to the day to finish it. So I don't know why. This is a volume where, bearing in mind, Thomas Merton is a Trappist monk, so he lives in a hermitage at a monastery. This is a volume where he has a relationship with somebody who is much younger than him. It's difficult to know from what he writes how far that relationship went. There are entries where he talks about lovemaking, but it's not clear that is actually what he means. So it's difficult to know. But I don't think that's necessarily the reason why I took so long to read it, but I think it probably contributes to it. But anyway, I finished that this week, 5 years on from when I started it, which is probably a record for me, I would think. I've started the final volume, not got that far, but I don't think I'm going to take 5 years to read this. And this is the final volume because it's precedes his death, and I think actually, the he writes right up until he dies. So yeah, so I've got a lot of his books, not just his diaries, but a lot of his other writings and a lot of writings about him and so on. So yeah, just put those behind me because I've got quite a stack of stuff on the desk. Having finished that, I picked up something a little bit lighter and a little bit shorter to read. And this is a kind of tie-in with Octember, where the idea is to read both fiction and non-fiction books that feature cephalopods, so octopus, squid, cuttlefish, nautilus, and so on. And I picked up Ian Fleming's Octopussy and the Living Daylights. So there is an octopus in this, so if you've seen either the films Octopussy or the Living Daylights, you would be familiar with some of the stories in this volume. but ultimately they're not the same as the movies. So, unsurprisingly. But yeah, I enjoyed this. This was just a nice. It's less than 100 pages, so probably, I guess it counts for Shorty September as well. So it is an interesting read, and one that kind of ticks a number of event boxes, I guess. And yeah, enjoyed that. That was worth the read. After that, I picked up another short book. I think I've said on the channel before that a couple of my kind of favourite artists are Monet and Van Gogh. So this, if this shows up, this is Vincent van Gogh, The Healing Power of Nature. Now, this isn't a book that he wrote. It is based on Van Gogh wrote a lot of letters in his life, which have been, many of them have been published, and I've got a volume, a Penguin Classics volume of his letters. This is based on a lot of those letters, but it pulls out just little snippets and couples them with some of the drawings from his kind of sketchbooks and things like that. So it's mostly, so it's like a page from a sketchbook or a letter and some words from a letter. Some of them kind of relate to one another, others don't. And it, again, it's quite a short book and quite a short read. But it's nice to look at some of there's a familiarity to the pictures, in the sense of the artist, but not necessarily so that kind of blue and green and yellow, but not necessarily the sort of pictures that he is famous for. So sunflowers. But yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to find. I've bookmarked a lot of pages, so there's a picture of a kingfisher. But yeah, so that was an interesting read. Some are just like pencil sketches, and others are a bit more colourful. But yeah, I think that was I really enjoyed reading this. It was again a nice break from some of the other bits and pieces and some of the things that were going on last week, or this week rather. And then another, this is just an essay that I read. I've got a lot of volumes of scientific essays, mostly kind of around on the sort of biology side of science, or by kind of authors who are recognized as popular science writers. So people like Stephen Jay Gould, E.O. Wilson, and in this case, David Quammen. And I thought, Octember, I would look through those volumes. There must be something, one of them must have written about cephalopods, surely. And I don't know how many volumes I've got. Couple of dozen maybe. And I looked in a good majority of them, and I found one essay, which is in this volume, and let's see if I can find it. It is, yes, The Troubled Gaze of the Octopus. And this talks about, if you don't know, octopus and other cephalopods have what is called camera eyes. So humans have camera eyes. So we have a lens which focuses an image on a retina, and and so on, and so that is a camera eye. So we see in a similar way to octopus and squid, or they see in a similar way to us. So they're not like the compound eye of an insect, for example. They are very different. And this just talks about, in a humorous, light-hearted way, about if you are close to an octopus, how they will watch you, sometimes out of curiosity, I think sometimes trying to work out if you are a potential food item, or if you can provide them with some amusement. But also, I think there is an element of, because of the way octopus in particular have been studied in laboratory conditions, how, whether they're, and this is, there's a kind of cynical, humorous take on what are they actually planning to do to us, because of what we've done to them, kind of thing. So that was quite amusing. Quite enjoyed that. So, is that everything that I've read? Yes, it is, I think. So let's talk about, what am I reading currently? And related to that, a few books that have come in that I've pre-ordered that have arrived this week. So what am I currently listening to is another Octember pick, and this is Other Minds by Peter Godfrey-Smith, which looks at mostly octopus, but cephalopods in general, but mostly octopus. Looks at how their minds have developed, and in relation to other animals, humans in particular, and kind of how the octopus acts, can act both through its own brain, but also kind of, that its tentacles and so on can also act semi-independently. I know that James at Quaint and Curious Volumes has finished this book, and he's put up I haven't watched it because I didn't want to, just in case there were spoilers. So he may well have a better explanation for the book than I have at the moment, because I obviously haven't finished listening to it. But it is really good. I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, I'll link to his video below, so you can go and watch that if you're at all interested. But I would recommend the book, even though I've not finished it. I would recommend it. So let's talk about things that have come in the mail. One of which I am currently reading. There was a popular, is that the right word? It's not controversial, but an author who divides opinion, maybe, has a new book out, and it's a book with a series character in it, and the latest volume was published this week, and my pre-order copy arrived, and I've been reading it, and that is Dan Brown's The Secret of Secrets, which is a forgotten the character's name, Robert Langdon story, set in Prague, mostly at the moment anyway. I'm about coming up on a halfway point, I would guess. Put it this way, whatever you think about Dan Brown's writing, he is not Shakespeare, but he has written a really fast-paced thriller. As I say, I'm coming up to, what did I say, halfway through, and I think there's about not even the first half of a day in the story. So things are happening. I'm not quite sure what the overall storyline is, but yeah, we'll get to that, I'm sure. And then a couple of other things that came this week is Doctor Who Dracula. So this is by the author Paul Magrs, who is also a booktuber, and has written lots of Doctor Who novelizations. And I haven't. This probably will be the next book I read, but I haven't started this yet. He did do a read aloud of, I think it's the first chapter. I'll link below. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. So it's as you can probably tell from the picture, it's a adventure with the first Doctor. So yeah, looking forward to that. Let me just read the back to you. The Doctor and his companions arrive in a quiet, unassuming seaside town called Whitby. The terrible significance of the place evades them until they happen upon a theatre production that captivates their attention. Dracula. Suddenly murders are occurring left, right and centre. Ian is soon missing, and the town, shrouded in myth and legend, is beginning to live up to its name. Clearly there is a Dracula at large, and more to the theatre than meets the eye, as the TARDIS team quickly realise you can never trust a vampire. Yeah, looking forward to reading that. And then another book that I pre-ordered, which I am really looking forward to reading, which is Jenny Uglow's A Year with Gilbert White. So I will have mentioned Gilbert White on the channel before, and this I haven't had a chance to look at this in any detail, but it is just a spectacular volume. It's got lots of illustrations. It's centered around, as it says, a year from, Gilbert White again, a letter writer, a parson in the parish of Selborne, which isn't very far away from where I live now. In fact, it's like half an hour's drive. And he used to write letters to friends around, the nature of the parish and what was going on, the different seasons and so on. So this takes, a year with him. So there are, links to his diaries, but they're not. Then doesn't look like they are verbatim copies. So yeah, I'm thinking of kind of having a bit of a Gilbert White deep dive, because I've got lots of other. I've obviously got the letters in several volumes. This one's falling apart. So yeah, these are the letters. I've got biographies of Gilbert White. I've got other illustrated versions as well. So yeah, I think that is something I'm thinking of maybe later this month or next month, doing a bit of a Gilbert White deep dive. That, I think, is it. I don't think there's anything else, and this video is almost 25 minutes long. So if you've made it to the end, thank you for watching, and I will speak to you again soon. Take care. Bye bye.